What up? What's going on? Hello. Hi, all you wonderful, cool people. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. You're a cool person. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the CHGO Bulls podcast. I am sitting in right now for our guy, Matt Peck, who is passed out somewhere in a very happy place, chilling right now. So I'm filling in. I'm Big Dave. Follow me at Ball Sports. This man over here that is perfectly coiffed is Will the GOAT Gottlieb. Follow him at Will_Gottlieb. The fresh haircutted Joey Spathis on the ones and twos. Follow him at Joey Spathis. And Will, we have a guest today, sir.
We sure do. And we're glad to welcome him on. It's been a while. I don't know that. I don't think I was here last time Jamaal was on. I think it might have been a Bulls home game, so I missed him. But I saw you at a game last year, and it's going to be great to catch up with you. Jamaal from Bulls Central, welcome to the show.
Let's go.
I appreciate it.
Let's go.
I'm a little disappointed that Matt's not here because I had a story for him over the weekend. I tried a vegan hot dog, and it was actually very good. And I wanted to let him know.
See if he watches the show when he's not here.
I know that he would not try it. I know that he would refuse to go the vegan route, but it was actually pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie. My wife is more or less vegan, so I kind of have to eat that here and there, much to Matt's dismay.
You have no choice. Yes, you have to enjoy it. But it was good, and that's what's important.
I mean, I would still prefer a regular hot dog, but
sure,
vegan hot dog, it worked. It worked. They've gotten better at creating alternative meats. I'll say that much.
What's the next step then? Like, what's the next substitute you are willing to try?
I mean, I've tried the vegan burger, the Beyond Meat burgers, Impossible burgers. They're decent. They're not like regular burgers, but I'll eat one if it's in front of me. If I have a choice, I'm always going to go with the regular burger. I don't know. I think I draw the line at like the weird genetically engineered like chicken nuggets and things like that. I probably wouldn't go that route for sure.
Okay, that's fair. Try salmon burger one day, man. This is just telling you, salmon burger is fine.
I do like salmon burgers. I love salmon.
The ones that they at Costco, they have frozen ones.
Yeah.
Have you tried these?
I have not.
So good.
At Costco?
So good.
Oh yeah. Go recommend it.
So good.
All right.
Highly recommend.
I'm in there, man. I'm down. Oh, we can have this discussion all day long, but how about we get into some Bulls discussion and some Bulls talk with our guy Jamaal, man. Jamaal, I just want to honestly, before we get into it, test your temperature on the team. Just take your temperature on the team right now. I know there are some Bulls fans like myself who are just fans and will watch the Bulls all the time, anytime. I don't care what product they put on the floor. I'm going to be sitting there watching it. And then there's some who are like, you know what? I'm not as excited about what I'm seeing this team and this front office do. And I don't know, the kind of fan I'm going to be this year. They might keep their eye on it, but probably not watching so hard. Where do you fall in this lexicon right here, sir?
Well, it's funny. I see a lot of people saying like, "Oh, I'm done with the Bulls. I'm not going to watch them this year. It's not going to be fun and exciting to watch them." If anything, I mean, they're not going to be winning anything. They're not going to be contending for a title. They're probably not going to be contending for the postseason, although we can talk about that because that is even up for debate. I'm probably more excited about this Bulls team than I have the last 2 years or so, and I think it's because they're finally going in a different direction. I mean, I think obviously there are going to be some pieces that still have to be worked out between Zach LaVine, Vooch. What are they going to do with Lonzo Ball? But if anything, I'm just looking forward to seeing some new faces on the roster that can hopefully impact some change for the future. I wouldn't say that I'm incredibly optimistic, but it's probably the most optimistic I've been, at least for the last couple of seasons, because what was there to look forward to last year beside just, kind of being a play-in team and getting frustrated with the team on a nightly basis? At least this year, because there's going to be such low expectations, I feel like that makes it not as bad, but I don't know. That's just me.
No, that's interesting because I think a lot of people, obviously there was a large group of the fan base who like really loved DeRozan for good reason. He was incredible. Like, I'm not trying to take that away, but at the same time, as you just said, it was clear that it was time to move on. But I think now they're kind of at this crossroads where they need to get on the court and prove that they're heading in the right direction now, because they made this big trade for Josh Giddey. Obviously, they lose DeRozan. You've still got Vooch. You've still got Zach. Lonzo potentially coming back. There's just like, I do feel like they're in kind of this, you talk about Patrick all the time,
Yes.
this like prove it moment. And I think that's true for the team too. Like, what are you guys doing? Because right now they are kind of straddling this line of, we're going to be worse, but we're not going to be like tanking. We're also not going to be good enough to compete. And we already weren't good enough, even though we're not going to be as good as we were last year. So it's just kind of an interesting position to be in. And I'm curious to see what they look like for that reason too. But Jamaal, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the specific moves that went down this offseason. And we mentioned Giddey. So obviously, like, initial sticker shock of that deal has worn off now. It's been a couple of months. What are your thoughts and reactions to that deal? And has that changed at all since the original news?
I think the sticker shock factor is really important when you talk about that kind of wearing off, because now I feel like I'm excited for Giddey. Whereas before, when the trade first was announced, I wouldn't say that I was livid, but I was pretty grossed out by what they did in terms of not. I mean, it's because we knew what the Bulls could have possibly gotten for Caruso. That's the main factor, right? If the reports had been coming out leading up to all the interest in Caruso was, I don't know, not that much, or maybe just one first round pick, and they ended up getting Josh Giddey for it, then great. But the fact of the matter is, and I think, Will, you even had an article that came out shortly before the trade was made, was that there were multiple first round picks on the table for a deal for Alex Caruso. And so when the trade came out that the Bulls got Josh Giddey and that was it, yeah, it's a big disappointment. But I think now that, time has passed and we look at what Giddey can potentially bring to this crew, and the fact that Alex Caruso, as great as he is, I love him. I will always root for Caruso, and I wish that he could still somehow be on the Bulls, even though it wouldn't have made sense for them. Fact of the matter is, 30 years old, wasn't going to be a part of their timeline going forward. You bring in a player like Giddey, who's only 21, that can actually provide you that true playmaking floor general that the Bulls have been seeking for so many years, right? It's like they wanted that with Lonzo Ball. Things didn't pan out because of all the injuries. Now they're able to get that with Josh Giddey. 21, he's going to be 22 by the time the season starts. I think that's a step forward in the right direction. Is it the ideal trade that I would have wanted? No, but given the Bulls and their track record and how we've been disappointed about trades that they've made in the past, I think it could have been worse. So I'm actually okay with it at this point in time. I would have liked for it to have been a situation where they maybe got a first round pick or even a second round pick for that matter, especially when you see all the trades that went down after the fact. But I can live with it at this point.
I want to ask you this and kind of put you in the mindset of Billy Donovan a little bit, because he has kind of an unenviable task with all the guards that he has on this squad. So getting a guy like Giddey, who has the 1 year left, and so he is going to need to play. Given a guy with Lonzo Ball, who is coming back off a devastating injury, you want him to play because if he plays well and teams see that, they might want to trade for him. There's Kobe White, who you don't want to stunt his growth, and you want him to continue to grow. There's Ayo Dosunmu. There's a Javon Carter. There are so many guards here on this squad. What would you be doing in this scenario as far as who you would be starting at this position, or would you be using it kind of as like a revolving door?
I mean, all I'll say is I'm glad I'm not a coach or a GM because I really don't know how I would approach the situation. I was going to ask you guys that. I mean, at this point, it's like the Bulls are going to be in a place where they're going to have to find this balance between prioritizing player development, but also showcasing some of the players that they're looking to trade and their value and worth, right? So Zach LaVine is going to have to start, even though he probably doesn't make sense in terms of taking minutes away from guys like Kobe or Ayo, even Lonzo for that matter. So it's like, how do you balance those out? And that's going to be Billy Donovan's biggest challenge, is figuring that out. And then I think from a starting lineup standpoint, I don't see how you can't start or I guess cannot start Kobe White. You have to include him. Like you can't have him come off the bench, not after the season that he just had. But at the same time, how do you fit Josh Giddey, Kobe, and Zach LaVine within the starting lineup? And then you're looking at from a defensive standpoint, that's going to be terrible. I don't know. I think it's going to be the biggest predicament that Billy Donovan is going to be in. I think the thing I've been wondering the most about Billy Donovan going into this season is where is his head going to be at with this team? Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, and Will, you probably know this better than I do. I mean, Billy and the Oklahoma City Thunder parted ways mutually, partially because Billy Donovan didn't want to be a part of a rebuilding situation, which is ironic now that they're, a contending team. The Bulls are, for all intents and purposes, rebuilding. I know everyone calls it a youth movement. You can call it whatever you want, retool. They're heading in that rebuilding direction. Is that something that Billy Donovan's going to want to be a part of at this point in his career? And so I think aside from just, how, he's got this delicate balance of figuring out how he's going to work in rotations, especially within, the backcourt, how is he going to be mentally throughout this season, knowing that this probably isn't really signed up for? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the Billy rebuild stuff, I'm not sure I ever saw like a hard report on that. I don't know exactly where it came from originally, but that's certainly the sentiment that has been floating around for these past couple of years. I'm sure there was a part of him that like didn't want to go through all of that and like really start over, but his contract was up. I think the Thunder were clearly moving in a different direction. He had already been there for 5 or 7 years. Like, I think it was kind of time. And I also think this is maybe like more informed speculation than like anything else. But I think I'll put it this way. I think he really appreciates the current situation that he's in with management, where it's a little bit more collaborative than it sounds like it was with OKC, where for my kind of outsider understanding of what goes on there, it's like Sam Presti's the head honcho and that it's like his thing. Sure. And that makes sense. That's his job. He's the president. But I think with the Bulls front office and Billy always talks about how he's not like in the war room or anything like that, but he is involved in those discussions. He feels like he's, working with the front office and not just like, listening to orders. And so I think from that sense, he's probably a little bit happier in Chicago than he was in OKC. But at the same time, I don't know. I think like it's just a tricky situation. We were just talking about this before, like with regards to the lineup. Like, I mean, the Bulls have 12 or 13 guys that you could argue should be in the rotation. 9 or 10, probably 9 are going to be in the rotation. So what you're talking about, Jamaal, as far as like, who does Billy play? That's going to really, tip his hand and the Bulls' hand as far as like what their actual goals are. And that's something I'm really interested in, is like, are Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips going to be in the rotation, or are Javon Carter and Torrey Craig going to be in the rotation? Because it's probably not going to be all 4 of them. And so that's something I'm really curious about. How does Giddey fit into all of that? Obviously, like you subtract DeRozan and that clears up a lot of usage in space. But yeah, I just think there's so many unanswered questions. And to your point about like rebuilding, I think they are rebuilding, but they're not like fully there yet, right? Like they are almost retooling because they still have so many of their old players, even though they're trying to rebuild without really tanking and tearing it down. So it's just kind of a fascinating situation. And we've talked it all to death here, every day on our show, but it's just interesting to hear other people's perspective that aren't so, I mean, obviously you're following the team as closely as anybody, but just other people's perspective outside of our little pod. So
sure. Yeah. But I would say, and I'll say it quickly because we got to pay some bills in a second. I'm one of those people who definitely was like, Billy Donovan doesn't want to be around for a rebuild. Just watching how he was brought in that first year, they was weeding out what they didn't want, and then all the moves were made, and it was like, okay, let's go. And then to have that devastating injury happen, you kind of were, plugging holes in a boat that was sinking. And I didn't think Billy Donovan wanted to be on a boat that was sinking and be there anymore. And so just looking at what the team is now, and I've said this on the show before, I just think like he's kind of setting up a strategy, an exit strategy to get up on out of there, as far as with new Wes Unseld coming in and getting the other assistant coach that he has and bringing those guys. I just think that he's making that kind of move. And Billy Donovan, and again, you'll never hear me tell you that he's not a really good coach, because that dude can coach. But just part of me just feels like he doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild and start that over again in his process. He's never really been a part of one before until here. He's got here for that. So I don't know. That's just never been my feeling on it. But you'll never hear me diss him as a coach. And he has a really tough task. And I want to give my answer to that question also when we come back from this break, talking to our guy from Bulls Central, Jamaal.
Firstly, I have to tell you guys about a game-changing product in the nights out industry called ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol. So let's face it, after a night with drinks, it's hard to bounce back the same way we used to. We're all getting a little bit older. We know Peck is out there doing his thing on the dock in Michigan at some point.
Dock of the Bay.
He should be checking out ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol, because if there is a surefire way to wake up feeling fresher than ever after a night of drinking, it is ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol. Pre-Alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered prebiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break down this byproduct. So just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, especially before you drink something else, to make sure that you wake up feeling your best. Anybody who has tried this product, and like I said, Matt right now is slurping it down on the docks. Before I broke Dave. Before a night of drinking. The problem is Matt just constantly has the IV of beer flowing through him.
Yes.
So he's got to find a starting point for the ZBiotics. But if he does, he will wake up feeling at the top of his game. So whether it's vacations, weddings, birthdays, reunions, or just chilling on the dock at the lake, there's so much going on. Get the most out of your summer plans by stocking up on pre-alcohol now. Go to zbiotics.com/CHGO Bulls to get 15% off your first order when you use code CHGO Bulls at checkout. Pre-alcohol is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/CHGO Bulls to use code CHGO Bulls at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and all of our good times.
Yes. Oh, many good times ahead. And also something you're going to need if you're an adult is Empire Today, ladies and gentlemen. You want to take care of that home flooring. Empire Today is the only place to do that at, because with Empire Today, you get the shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and of course, a low price guarantee. Empire's philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. When they leave out, what they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Message. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find that perfect style just for you. And of course, they got that virtual floor designer. It's a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's simple. Just snap a picture, clickety-clack, and instantly you will see how new floors will look in your home. Shopping for floors at the big box store can be frustrating. You run into the 16-year-old who's just working there for the summer. He don't know what he's doing or what he's talking about. You might want to talk to somebody who was working there and he's doing plumbing today. He don't know what's going on. Flooring is all Empire Today does, ladies and gentlemen. They live and they breathe flooring. You heard what I said. So you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. And of course, they service their own warranties. If any issue does arise, just call Empire. They service all warranties themselves. You won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. Why would you have that on your phone anyway? Nope, just Empire Today, y'all. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details. 588-2300. Spaffis!
Empire Today.
Dulcet tones.
All they do is floors, 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 no matter
what. We're joined by our guy from Bulls Central, man. I got Jamaal hanging out with us, talking Bulls. To answer that other part of your question, I think you have to go with Josh Giddey as your starter at the point guard, and I'm putting Kobe at the 2. and we'll let the chips fall as they may as the season goes from that point on. I don't think you can really start Lonzo coming off of, that injury. Ayo is shown he can be an impact, whether he's starting or coming off the bench. Javon Carter has to work his way back, kind of into those good kind of graces to get on that floor. So that's why also, Maul, I think that this preseason, I really kind of highly anticipate it because a couple of guys are definitely going to be playing for a position and have to show that they actually could be on the floor, like Alonzo, like a Javon, as we just mentioned, or even a guy like Patrick Williams. We want to see, and even a guy like Modest, like we want to see these guys get these opportunities. And I think this preseason, they'll get that opportunity to do so, sir.
Let me ask you guys this. How do you think Kobe is going to do in yet another new role that he's going to be taking on, right? I mean, because it's effectively a new role in a way, right? Like throughout his time in Chicago, he's always had to take on these various roles. And last year, it was like, all right, Kobe has finally become the starting point guard for the Bulls, the starting point guard that they need. And now they bring in Josh Giddey, which I agree with you, Big Dave. That probably means that he's going to go to the two because you have to start Giddey because he's a better overall facilitator and playmaker. So how do you think Kobe's going to react to, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be playing more off the ball, which I think he's great at. So I don't think it'll be a challenge, but just sort of like mentally the psyche of Kobe, like how do you think he's going to approach that, knowing that he's going to have to take on yet another role for this team?
So to me, this is kind of a interesting question, but I think it actually has more to do with Zach than it does with Kobe or Giddey.
Oh, how so?
Because DeMar's gone. That's like 27% usage rate out the door. Now you replace it with Zach, and he at times has had a lower usage, but mostly a much higher usage. And so, like, I do think that there is, in theory, as much usage for Kobe as there was before. The problem is when you swap Giddey in for Caruso, and then you basically swap Zach in for DeMar, like the total pie does have to get smaller a little bit. But I think, like, again, that's why they tried to move off of Zach, because if you move off of Zach or you play him in a smaller role, like that's where things open up a lot more. And so even though Kobe might be moving more to an off-ball role, I would actually argue that's already what he was doing. Like DeMar was the one who was initiating the offense. He was the one that was drawing two. He was the one that was spraying it out and letting Kobe play with an advantage. And I think ideally that's what you see with Giddey. The problem, I think, is more of Zach eating up that usage that DeMar is going to vacate. But I also think that, like, it's not just one for one. And Jamaal, I'm curious to hear your take on this, because to me, like, one of the things I've been thinking about with this team is that it's very easy to sit here and say, they lost DeRozan, they're going to be worse on offense. They lost Caruso, they're going to be worse on defense. But I think you can make up for some of that by playing a little faster. Like DeRozan, as great as he was, played a certain style. And I think if you continue to play that style without DeRozan, you're doomed. But I think they're going to have to change some things. And so I'm curious to hear, Jamaal, what you think about how they're going to reinvigorate their offense now with this opportunity to play a little bit faster, to run a little bit more, to do a little bit more movement in the half court, to not have so much of the offense really kind of funneled into this mid-range area where DeRozan was going to play make. Now other guys are going to have to share it a little bit more. What do you kind of see the offense looking like with this new look Bulls team?
Well, it's funny that, like, that's why, going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the show, why I'm excited to see this team, because I do think that the overall offense is going to be much more fun and exciting. They're going to be getting downhill quickly. Giddey's going to be throwing the ball out in transition. I mean, do you remember the game? I think it was right after they were 5-14, right? And everything was kind of going downhill. And it was like, all right, this clearly is not going to work. Everyone was frustrated. Zach wanted out. And then the following game, I think it was both Zach and DeMar were out of the lineup. And they were playing the Bucks. Stop me if I'm not remembering this correctly. They were playing the Bucks. They ended up winning in overtime with that crazy Caruso shot. In that game, though, I remember everyone was tweeting about it. We were like, the Bulls have found their identity. The Bulls have found their identity without DeMar and Zach. So it's kind of to answer your question, Will, I think, yes, they're going to lose a lot defensively, but they're going to gain a lot offensively with their ability to move more quickly. I think it's going to be more fun and exciting in terms of just the general level of pace. They're not probably going to be that great of a shooting team because, Giddey's not a great shooter. Modest, his shooting is still, a bit of a question mark at this point. But it's going to be a fun, exciting team that's going to be trying to generate offense much more quickly than we saw last year. So they're gonna look a lot different in my view. They're probably not gonna be as good, which I think we're all expecting. But I think Big Dave, you probably said this before. It's like fun bad, right? Like they're gonna be bad, but they're gonna be fun to watch. And I just keep going back to that game against the Bucks last year, where it looked like they had kind of turned things around, and everyone's saying, "Oh my God, DeMar's out, Zach's out. This team can actually be pretty good if we just focused on some of their younger players." Well, this is the chance now. They're going to be focusing on their younger players.
Yeah, and that was the game after the low point of the season, what turned out to be the low point of the season against the Celtics when they got walloped by 33 in that last in-season tournament game.
Yeah.
And then they came back and won I think it was overtime game against the Bucks. Yeah. You mentioned Buzelis, and I think some of the kind of talk around town has been starting to think about like the rotation and the minutes distribution and who's going to get minutes. And as we talked about, I think who gets in that backup power forward role from training camp is going to say a lot about who this Bulls team thinks it is, right? If you're, like I said, if you're coming out and playing Torrey Craig over Buzelis, that tells me you're more interested in winning games than developing young players.
True.
So what do you think the rotation will be at the forward spot? I think we can all agree on the starting lineup, right? Giddey, Kobe, Zach, Patrick just got the big contract, and Vooch. You bring in Jalen Smith. Io's obviously going to be in the rotation. After that, like we said, 8-9 guys.
Yeah.
Who fills in those back spots? And do you feel like Modest Buzelis is going to get like is he going to be given a rotation spot just because he's the Bulls' 11th overall pick? Or do you think that there is a chance they kind of go into the season thinking, maybe let's make a push for the play-in, let's bring in Torrey Craig, see how it goes, and then if all fails, then we kind of pivot towards our younger players?
Yeah.
And I'll just, before you answer, I'll say the same thing too with Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry, because I think they're in that same category.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I mean, I think if the Bulls, like you said, it will be very telling if they start prioritizing Torrey Craig over Modest Buzelis, right? That indicates right there they're not looking to just, tank, lose a bunch of games, or, focus on some of their younger players. They're actually trying to win, which would bother me. That would be pretty upsetting if that actually ends up being the case. I think a lot of it, though, depends on how Modest shows up at training camp. Like, if he's clearly just not ready, I don't know, maybe kind of liken it to Dalen Terry, even though different situations, because when Dalen Terry was brought in, the Bulls were obviously trying to win at that point in time. But he clearly just wasn't ready, right? And he had to, be sent to the G League for a period of time and try to develop there. I would say that's really the only scenario where Modest should not be getting rotational minutes if he just clearly is not meant to be on the court. But based on what we saw in Summer League, based on what we know of him, coming out of high school, playing for the G League at night, he's an NBA level player, still very raw, has a lot to work on in terms of his overall game. So I don't see it being a situation where it would be like a Dalen Terry where, okay, we're going to have to, send him down to the G League, get some time, and, maybe next year it'll be his time, right, to fit into the rotation while he just kind of sits on the bench. That's really the only scenario I see that. Otherwise, like you said, unless they're trying to win and they put Torrey Craig in there, that would be the only case that I see Torrey Craig actually getting rotational minutes. But going back to what I was saying earlier, you also have to find time for some of these players to where you're showcasing what they can do for their trade value, right? Because Torrey Craig could be an option, a person that you can include in a package deal on a vet min deal, expiring contract that you might want to move in a trade. If he's just sitting on the bench, you're not really going to be able to get much for that. So I don't know. I really have no idea how the Bulls are going to approach the rotation this year. It's going to be one of the more fascinating things to see how it plays out. And I've talked about this on my channel as well. The other thing is I have no idea what to predict as it relates to this team this season, or this upcoming season. Like, they could be one of the worst teams in the league and, bottom 5 record, and they're tanking for Cooper Flag, or they could be making their way up the standings and somehow find themselves into the playoffs. I honestly have no idea. And it's because there's still stuff up in the air, right? Vucevic, is he going to get moved? Is Zach ultimately, is he finally going to get moved? What do they do with Javon Carter? What do they do with Torrey Craig? All that stuff. So I don't know. We'll see.
Real quick, because we got to take a break. Yes or no, would you be upset if Modest spent any time in the G League?
No, I mean, if he needs to go down to the G League because he's not ready, no, I wouldn't be upset about that. But I just don't see that, right? I mean, just like I said, based on what we've seen from him in Summer League, he's a very talented player, and it would not make sense for him to be sent down to the G League. But I'm not a coach, I'm not a scout, or talent analyst, anything like that. So If he goes in the training camp and they're like, yeah, he's not ready, we need to send him down to the G League, I wouldn't be upset by that. No.
Who you are. That's our guy, Jamaal. Host of Bulls Central. He's hanging out with us, y'all. Come on back after this break. Oh, this ad right here is Baby Joey approved. You saw Baby Joey over the weekend, right, Joey? And he's doing well? Did you understand? Oh, you did, but Baby Joey ain't.
Some never understood.
He didn't get it. He was like, why? Why you got to pay so much money to look so cool? He didn't get that. Shady Rays don't get that either. So guess what? They set out to do something about it to get you ready for the season ahead with quality shades that are built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have got you covered with those premium polarized shades that will not, I promise you, they will not break the bank. They're an independent sunglasses company offering world-class product rated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. For over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames, crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for your outdoor, and as I'm sure Matt Peck is proving, your indoor adventiones. Will told me it's a word. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find that perfect pair to match your style. And even if you don't love your shades, exchange them for a new pair or return them worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop, and their team always has your back with that personal and fast support. So exclusively for the listeners out there, Shady Rays is giving away their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com, use the code CHGO, and get yourself 35% off of those premium polarized shades. Watch your ears, Jamaal. Try it for yourself. The shades that are rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people because the Shady Rays, y'all, with the Rays are just so shady.
You guys know about our daily live YouTube show. You're watching it here with us. You're hanging out in the comments, and we love and appreciate you for it. You know about our pre- and post-game shows for every single Bulls game, all 82, maybe 3, maybe 84. Who knows?
Don't do this.
Plus preseason, we're doing it all. You know about the premium written content from Adam Hogue, Nick Moriano, the Blackhawks guys, the Cubs, the White Sox, all of our teams. And you know about 20% off on all events when you become a CHGO diehard, because we are going to London.
Oh, foggy
for
London
the Bears
town.
game.
Yes.
This year, and there's a couple full packages remaining. It includes a direct flight to London and airport transfers, hotel accommodations. Individual event tickets are now available at truefantravel.com. Customize your own package of CHGO events, and that could include coming to a event at a local pub in London, a party boat cruise, a pep rally, an all-inclusive tailgate.
Come on.
Ticket to the game.
Preach.
The Bears game are playing in London. So head to truefantravel.com to secure your spot on the best Bears trip all year. Spots limited, so make sure you do that quickly. But if you can't go with us to London, you can join us in Phoenix, Arizona to see the Bears go head-to-head against the Cardinals on November 3rd. Our trip there includes a 3-night stay at a 4-star premium hotel in Phoenix, Q&A with the Bears alumni. That will be a secret, to be named later. All-inclusive tailgate party, round-trip transportation, upper-level ticket to the game. So reserve your spot. Again, truefantravel.com now. Limited spots available. But that's not all. You know, we have great Bears coverage. You know, we have great Bulls coverage.
Facts.
We also have great Cubs coverage. And we're doing a takeover on September 6th against the Yankees. Pre-game meetup will happen. They're still trying to figure out a location.
Rizzo.
But it's already nearly sold out. So doesn't matter where we go. People are coming to join us. You can join too. allchgo.com/events. We're doing a fire takeover. We just had one, rather, and you can get 20% off on t-shirt. When you join, you get a free shirt. You get access to our Discord channel where you can talk with us and especially Dave about WWE.
Yup.
So what are you waiting for? Join now, allchgo.com to become a diehard member and join us on this fun thing that we are working on here called CHGO Sports.
Oh, it is so much fun, man. We're hanging with our guy Jamaal from Bulls Central. He is the host of it. Check it out because this is really an amazing podcast. Jamaal, I want to ask you about Patrick Williams. I've been talking about him a lot this offseason because I believe, Joey, what tour is Patrick Williams on?
He's on the No Excuses Tour coming to a city near you.
That's right.
This October.
That's right. The No Excuses Tour for Patrick Williams is what he's on. It's the year for me where everything is removed from him. People say, oh, well, DeMar is taking all the shots from him. Well, guess what? He's about to get all that opportunity to get all the shots in the world. Oh, he's kind of playing out of position. Well, guess what? He'll get a chance to play at the 3 as well. He'll get some of that time there. He'll be starting at the 4, but he might get an opportunity. He'll say they put Modest in there. Might get that opportunity to get that at the 3. So All of that is out of the way. He's got his money, all these things. He's got experience now. He's been 5 years in the league, going into 6. Where are you standing on Patrick Williams when you're like, this is the season I want him to have?
Well, I'm going to ask a quick question because I'm curious if Will has any updates. Have we heard anything about Patrick Williams in terms of his injury status? Because that kind of goes into my answer, because I have very high expectations of Patrick Williams. I 100% agree. No more excuses. This is the year that you have to show up, that you have to prove that you are worth the number 4 pick, although we can talk about that because I think a lot of times too many expectations are placed on Patrick Williams for that reason. But this is it. Like, this is Pat's year. No more excuses. This is your year to have the breakout season that we've all been waiting for. But is he healthy? So, Will, is he healthy? Because everyone else, we heard from AK and some of the press conferences, right? Lonzo's cleared to do everything now. Zach's been cleared to do everything now. But Patrick Williams, he was a little wishy-washy on, and I don't know if that's just because he didn't have the details at the time, but what's sort of the latest on him?
So we sat down with Pat in Vegas at Summer League on July 13th, and we asked him that very question. Here's what he had to say. What have you been up to this summer? Rehab, that's pretty much it. Trying to get back to 100%, making sure the foot is not anything to worry about during the season. How are you physically? I'm pretty good. I'm running and jumping now. No pain, no swelling. So it's all just a matter of getting my legs back under me. What was the rehab timeline now compared to what it was supposed to be? In the beginning, they told me 4 to 6 months. I believe we're at 4.5 going on 5 now. The bone is fully healed, but that rehab process is pretty much just resting, making sure that I'm getting enough rest on that foot, going over some pattern things, how you run, how you walk, some preventative things. But for the most part, it's just letting the bone rest, letting the body do what it does. Do you expect to be ready for training camp? For sure. So that's what we know. I think clearly on the mend, but also not fully recovered yet. I mean, that was a month and a half ago, and right now we are at the 6 month. I think we're actually exactly 6 months. I think it was March 4th was the surgery, and today's September 4th. So exactly 6 months on a 4 to 6 month timeline. He should be good. Maybe I can do some digging on that one, but yeah, I think he's going to be ready to go. I don't think the Bulls would have signed him to this big deal if they had any reservations about that. Clearly not great, coming off of surgery to get a big deal like that, but I think the Bulls are confident that he is going to be a big piece of what they're building here. What do you think of the contract, though? I mean, do you feel like that was good value? Obviously, a big number, $90 million for a guy that averages 10 points a game and hasn't improved in his scoring category at all. But obviously, we know there's more to the game than 10 points per game.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the contract was fine, and some people kind of push back on me on that. I mean, you look at what other guys, around his skill set are getting in the league, and you see that it's not really a bad deal at all, especially given the fact that, the salary cap is only going to continue to increase year over year. I think it's 18 million, right, throughout the 5 years flat. I think by the end of that deal, it's going to look very favorable to the Bulls. It'll probably be near where the mid-level exception is going to be around that time. 5 years from now, what's that going to look like? So, I mean, it's risky, right? Because he's coming off an injury. He hasn't really progressed much since his rookie season, but part of that is due to the fact that he's had 2 major injuries. So I get that there's some skepticism around the contract itself and giving $90 million to Patrick Williams. But you look at a guy like Jaden McDaniels, who Jaden McDaniels is a better player than Patrick Williams, at least at this point in time anyway, right? He brings a lot more defensively, obviously healthy, more flashes offensively as well. But I guess I'm just trying to compare it to, you see what Jaden McDaniels got, and it's like, okay, well, Patrick Williams got $90 million over 5 years. He's 23 years old. That's going to pay him through the peak of his prime. It's also tradable down the line because he's still going to be in the peak of his prime if you need to pivot. So I don't really have any issues with the contract. And I still think that there's a lot of potential from Pat. Like I said, it's a no excuses season, but you can't really put a price tag. I mean, you can, right? Literally you can, but you can, like, for 3-and-D type players, someone like Patrick Williams and his skill set, that's valued and coveted in this league, and you have to pay up for it. So I was fine with the contract.
That's exactly what I've been saying about it too, is just like, even if he doesn't improve at all, he's a very good 3-and-D player. Sure. And that you're paying him, like you said, Jamaal, mid-level exception type money. And you brought up Jaden McDaniels. He signed a 5-year, $131 million deal. So 26.2 average compared to Pat's 18. So obviously, like you said, I think Jaden at this point is a better player, more productive on both ends. But, $8 million a year, is that the difference? Maybe for a younger player.
Maybe. Jamaal, you said with Patrick Williams you had high expectations. Can you expound on that a little bit? Like, what do you mean when you say high expectations for a guy like Patrick Williams?
I mean, I need to see that Pat's going to be one of the Bulls' primary scoring options going into this season, right? And again, a lot of it depends on Zach and Vooch. If Zach and Vooch are both traded, Patrick Williams should be one of the Bulls' primary scoring options, right? I want to see that from him. I want to see him putting up, 16, 17 points a game minimum. I'd love to see more, obviously, but I don't want to have, insane expectations for the guy. And I want him to see that he's one of the better players, one of the best players on the Bulls anyway, from a defensive standpoint. I don't expect him to be an all-star. I think that's unrealistic, but getting to that level where you can say, okay, this guy maybe does have all-star potential, because I think when he was first drafted, everyone was like, oh yeah, everyone always said, the future, the next Kawhi 2.0, which was never really fair to put that kind of comparison on him to begin with. But the expectation at the time was, yeah, we could see this guy being a future all-star. I think if we can see that coming from Patrick Williams, like we saw from Kobe White last season, where it's like, okay, he's making strides in the right direction. He's, on that path to being close to a top 10 most improved player of the year candidate. That, to me, are the level of expectations that I have on Patrick Williams. I know they're high, but like you said, no more excuses. You're 23 years old. You just got a big contract, and you're going to have a lot of opportunity this year. So make it work.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned Zach and Vooch there. I think Zach is still the big thing with this team, right? Like, what are they going to do about this? Clearly, last season, November, there was the whole, Zach and Clutch agree that it's time to look for trades. Like, let's work together on this. Bulls have been looking for over a year and not been able to find anything. Obviously, he's coming back now, and I think everybody's going to try to play nice. They're going to try to find a role for him. They're going to try to have him fit into their new situation, see how that goes. But at a certain point, this is going to have to come to an end, right? So I'm curious when you think that will happen, how you think it will happen. Does it happen at the trade deadline? Does it happen before the season? Is it going to go on for another year and we're going to be in the same predicament again next summer? How do you foresee the Zach LaVine experience going? And what's your perspective on Zach these days? Because I think that just the general consensus on him has become so warped and not anything about him, the player, or him, the person, and all about him, the contract.
Yeah.
Well, let me say it's absolutely warped. And this is coming from someone who's actually been one of Zach's probably biggest critics, right? A lot of people on my channel back in the day used to call me a Zach hater. And I always said, it's not that I'm a hater, it's that I have high expectations of him because I know that what he can do. I know that he is an all-star, or at least at that time, he's an all-star. And so, but it's gotten to the point now where Zach has such a negative perception around the league that you would think that this was Ben Simmons. You know what I mean? Like, really high contract, can't stay healthy. His confidence is completely shot. Not a valuable player whatsoever. When Zach LaVine is healthy, he's an incredible player. You know what I mean? So it's like, I get it that the contract is not great, especially under the new CBA. Teams are going to be wary of taking that on. But Zach LaVine is a very highly efficient offensive player. We know he's limited defensively, highly efficient offensive player. And he's not that old. It's not like this is a 34, 35-year-old player we're talking about. He's 29, I believe, right? He's going to be turning 30 this season. So there should be more value for Zach LaVine around the market than what other people, would give him credit for. So as far as your question is, how do I see this all playing out? I think I've had Big Dave on recently. We were talking about how I think Big Dave, you said there's no scenario I see where Zach LaVine is on this team come opening night. And I agree with you at that time. And now I'm kind of well, it's kind of getting to that point where he's probably going to be around opening night. I would say there's no scenario, though, that Zach LaVine is on this team past the trade deadline. I just don't see it for a few reasons. One, because I think he will play well enough that some desperate team is going to want to go after Zach to think that he's going to be that piece that puts them over the top for a championship. And then the other reason is because he's probably going to make the Bulls a little too good to where they're going to be winning too many games. And so the Bulls are going to try to find and move him so that way they can, the rest of the season, not tank, but, be a little bit more on the losing side.
Player and not a winning player. And they weren't going to win more games because of Zach LaVine. I can't keep it straight.
I mean, you know what I mean, though. He's good enough that they're going to win a few more games.
to your point, I think that's where the perception of him has just gotten totally out of whack. It's two things can't be true. Like you're either a losing player and you're making your team lose, or you're good enough to help your team win, and it's just not the right situation. So
looks like people.
I'm with you, Jamaal.
People in the comments definitely echoing this. I got Cornell Dixon. I was just playing with Zach on the new 2K, and I literally forgot how good he was. Of course, it's just a game, but we're spoiled. He has all the tangibles for a good, solid player. He deserves better. Colin also saying Zach is a 50, 40, 85 player. Like, Will always trumpets that and echoes that because people definitely forget. Like,
not just that, that's 25 like elite. A game.
Yes. And 5 and 5 with that. You know what I mean? Like,
efficient, high volume scoring. It's tough to come by.
Puts in effort on defense, which is all you really wanted from him. We knew his deficiencies and, you know, what his shortcomings. But when you put the right kind of things around him, you're going to get, you know, the 2-time All-Star Zach LaVine. So, he's a good player. Teams, I think, will be clamoring for him because I really expect him just to have that kind of good season, or at least a good half a season, because I agree with you, Maul. Like, I think he is not going to make it after that trade deadline. I think he'll definitely be gone, and teams who are trying to make the playoffs and make that push, I think he'll be at the top of the list of guys that they'll be going after.
The other thing I'll say, because I've seen some Bulls fans say, well, what if Zach LaVine and Josh Giddey, come out and they just look phenomenal together, right? And is there a way where somehow Zach LaVine can actually make things work with the Bulls and he stays on with the team, right, throughout the rest of this contract? I just don't think that there's any scenario where that happens, in my view. Anyway, I'd be curious to see if you guys think differently. But the way I look at it is the breakup is going to happen. I don't think that there's a situation where it can be repaired to the point where you'd say, yeah, we're just going to keep Zach, for the long term, especially given the fact that the Bulls are going down this youth movement. He's still young. Like I said, he's not, 34, 35, but he already doesn't fit the timeline based on what the Bulls are trying to do now. But I'd be curious to know or hear what you guys think as far as, if things really are working out, things are clicking, Zach LaVine looks great. Do you think there's a world where he potentially stays on this team?
I think there's a chance just because of how the front office is. As we talked about a lot, where they didn't want to do a rebuild. You know what I mean? They wanted to keep pushing forward, trying to make the play-in, trying to make the playoffs, and go forward like that. I think if Zach comes out and it shows that there might be some winning there that could happen, I think it might complicate things a little bit for them. So there's a percentage of me that believes, I'll say 20%, of me believes that, they would hold on to that and see what they can do around that. But my overwhelming belief is basketball intelligence would take over and they would make the trade and do this and keep this top 10 pick and let the young guys grow and let Modest play and let Patrick have that time and let Kobe get that run also, along with Giddey, who you want to see because he's in the last year of a deal. So I think that will take over. But, a percentage of me believes that they might do that.
I think you're right. I also so one of the things that I've been most critical of Zach about over the years is he has predetermined reads, right? He decides what movie he's going to go to. And then regardless of how the defense plays him, he's going to that. So if they guard it well, he's turning it over, or he's missing a shot, right? I think that's kind of what the front office has done here. They've decided what they're going to do and they're going with it. And I think that's a really fundamental issue with your approach to the game. So do I think the Bulls should try to retain Zach LaVine longer term and keep him around if things are going well? Probably not. I think at a certain point you got to go younger. It's time to do some change and stuff like that. But also if you want to be good, and it's working, why wouldn't you? I mean, Zach played his best basketball when he was playing next to Lonzo Ball. Who knows what is going to happen with Lonzo? And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on him. But they bring in Giddey to try to replicate a lot of what he did offensively. What if Zach looks great? Can you just say, still we're done with him? Maybe that just becomes a situation where you're actually able to get positive value on the trade market. But I do think that my criticism of the front office is that they have decided what they're going to do and then they go out and do it regardless of optics, regardless of whether it's actually a good move. Same thing happened with the Giddey trade. They decided they wanted Giddey and then they overpaid to go get him. And I think that's problematic. So I'm curious to see how that goes. I don't necessarily think that they will run into that problem. But to me, that would be a situation where, okay, now let's just turn him into positive value elsewhere. Because at a certain point, you do need to get younger. You need to get cheaper. You've got Kobe and Ayo's contracts coming up. You've got to pay Giddey here. And that is like one of the bigger questions about what happens, before the season starts, if they can get a deal done or next summer. But I mentioned Lonzo. What do you think of his ability to come back? Like, are you expecting him to play basketball this year, or are you still kind of just like, let's see what happens and I'll believe it when I see it?
Well, I always said before, and I think a lot of people had said this as well, that, call me when he starts playing 5-on-5 without incident. He's doing that. And, that is a huge step in Lonzo Ball's recovery. Granted, the little bit of 5-on-5 footage that we saw, right, it wasn't, sprinting up and down the court. No one was playing defense. So it's going to be a lot different in an NBA game. But his shot looked good. His handles were decent. He still had the court vision. You're not going to lose that, court vision, that basketball IQ, no matter how long you've been injured. I think he plays. I think he will come back and be on the court this season, which that in and of itself, even if it is limited minutes, he's not the same player that he used to be. Just being able to get back out there is a huge deal based on everything that he's gone through. But I don't see him being the same player that he used to be. I've seen even Stacey King was talking about, I think he's going to come back better than he was before. And it's like, I don't see that because, one, he's now 2.5 years older. You haven't played at all during that time period, at least at an NBA level. So I don't see him coming back to being 100% the player that he used to be. But if he comes back, he contributes to winning, and the Bulls are able to kind of showcase what he can do and potentially find a trade for him before his contract expires, great. I don't see him being with the Bulls long term. One, because to your point, Will, the Bulls kind of being so focused, or the front office being so focused on their vision, they're now solely squarely looking at Josh Giddey as that point guard for the future. Even if Lonzo Ball does somehow come back better than he was before, I feel like they wouldn't, okay, well, now we got to trade Lonzo and get the most value we can for him because he still looks good. So I don't think that he's going to be with the Bulls long term, but I do think that he'll be playing this season for sure.
I want to go back. Hi, Julia. I want to go back and kind of ask this Zach LaVine question because I thought Will put this in our rundown. I thought it was a pretty brilliant question. He talked about Zach LaVine and, being on the floor. We understand he's going to have to play. Does that mean, or do you believe that he will stunt the growth of some of the younger guys who will also be playing, like a guy like Kobe, Ayo, Giddey, Pat, Mod, like whoever of those young guys? Do you feel like that stunts some of their growth, having Zach LaVine, still be out there getting these minutes that we know that he needs to have?
I've thought about this a lot over the offseason. I kind of go back and forth in it. At the end of the day, I think it depends on Zach LaVine's mentality. Does he want to come in and I hate using this phrase because it was such a controversial quote from a source, right? Like, do what he's told or do what he's asked, that Jamal Collier reported a while back. Or does he come in and he's like, you know what? I want to get traded. And I know the only way I'm going to get traded is I've got to increase my trade value, and I'm going to play to the ability that I think is going to get me the most, views around the league in terms of putting up these, eye-popping numbers and scoring the ball a lot, not really focused on the rest of my teammates because I want to be able to get out of here. Then yeah, that's going to stunt the growth of some of the other players, right? I mean, if Zach LaVine is mainly just high usage, is he's going to be the primary ball handler, he's going to be the one focusing on most of the shots. Yeah, that's naturally going to take away opportunities from some of the younger guys. That's my only concern. But if Zach LaVine comes in professional and he's like, I want to be a team player because that's also going to help my trade value, then I think it should be fine. The young guys are still going to have a lot of opportunity because DeMar is no longer here. And that in and of itself is going to open up a lot of more shot attempts, more opportunities on the floor. So I think it'll depend. It just depends on where Zach LaVine, where his head's at come, the start of the season.
You did a video, great YouTube channel, by the way, for anybody who's watching and doesn't already know about it, Bulls Central on YouTube. Jamal does like such a good job of making like news into a 5 or 10 minute clip or like a take. So and it's just like so well narrated. There's always good graphics with it. Great video. So subscribe if you don't already. But you did a video couple days ago now, 8 days ago, I'm just looking, smoking hot takes. What's like, give me some hot takes for the season, because I feel like we've just been talking around the same kind of stuff, and I need a little spiciness in my life.
Spicy. Cayenne.
Okay. I've got one. And again, it's a hot take for a reason. Doesn't mean, that it's something that I think is going to happen, but I also would not be shocked if it happened. The Bulls make the playoffs, and actually in that first round or so, they make some noise. They're not actually, going to get beyond the first round of the playoffs. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the determination and the passion from some of the younger guys. And just a new look roster that has a lot to prove. And you got Josh Giddey, who's looking for a contract. Kobe and Io are looking to get paid. So I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. That's one of my big hot takes. At the same time, though, like I mentioned earlier in the video, I also wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls are one of the worst teams in the league this year. That's why it's really hard to predict how the season is going to go. But that would be one of my hot takes as well.
You're saying play offs, not play in.
Playoffs.
I love it.
Ooh.
I love it.
Now
and that actually dovetails really nicely with my last question, which is, the lines right now, last time I looked, are like 27.5. What's your kind of expectation? Not necessarily prediction, but just like, where do you think the Bulls will end up in terms of wins and losses this year?
27.5 is pretty low. I took the over on the Bulls last year, and that worked out well, but barely. I would take the over. I would say the Bulls are probably going to be, again, if I had to take a guess at this point in time, because Zach, Vooch are still on the team, I would say probably in that 32, 33, 34 range, which I know is probably high for some people because a lot of people have them below 30 or around 30. I think that this team is actually going to be more talented than people expect. I think they're going to play a much different style of basketball, and I think it could go really well for them where they do, they just kind of outscore their opponent in some games. They're not going to be good defensively, but if you're better than the other team on offense, that's going to help you win games. So I don't think they're going to be that great, obviously, 33, 34 wins, but I think they're going to win more games than people are anticipating.
I mean,
no, you don't think so?
I'm just saying, like, I can talk myself into feeling like that because, I love my team. I want to see winning, but I don't want to lose my pick either. Like, oh, man. But if they make the playoffs, if that's what happens and they are number 6 seed, then that means the young guys have actually done something really good. And I'm not going to be against that at all. I'm not going to be against young guys and Patrick Williams on his tour doing his thing, or Kobe White taking a step in Io. I won't be against that. But if they're slunking into a play-in, then I'd be pissed. Then I don't want to see that at all. But playoffs, that means we're doing something, bro, if that's the case. So, but we're about out of time. And we thank our guy, Jamaal, from the Bulls Central Show. Check it out on YouTube. It is really, honestly, truly amazing. Everything Will said, I completely
go-to
echo.
source.
It is a go-to source.
Seriously.
It is amazing. And I've learned so much every time I watch it. Like, every time he asks me to come on the show, I'm honored. Like, honestly, I really am.
Yes,
I'm honored that he asked me to come on for real. So, yeah, thank you, Jamaal, man. Appreciate you being a friend. Appreciate you enjoying what we do because the feeling is very mutual, sir.
You guys are too kind, man. I'm just a fan that likes talking Bulls baskball. That's all. What you guys do every day, doing this podcast 5 days a week, that's much more incredible, especially during the offseason. And I know all of us Bulls fans appreciate that. All of us junkies that can't get enough of our Bulls content, to be able to have that throughout the year is great for sure.
Bulls Central on YouTube, Bulls Central YT on Twitter. Jamaal, thank you so much for joining us.
Mm-hmm. That's Will the Go Gottlieb. That's Joey Spazzles on the 1s and 2s. I'm Big Dave. We'll catch y'all tomorrow, y'all. Y'all be cool. We out. Peace.
Appreciate it.
We all silly like the man.